Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking to you all about how I rate and annotate the books I read. So I've been actually properly reading again now for about 3 years, and for quite a few of those years I've actually either had a bookstagram or a blog or something, so I think quite hard about how I rate books that I'm reading, but it is definitely safe to say that over those years my system for rating books has changed so much. It is ever evolving. I feel like I still haven't settled on something, and each book I read I feel like I get so stressed about how I'm rating it and whether it compares correctly to others, so I thought I may as well quickly talk you through how I go about rating my books and how I decide on a rating, and also it may just sort of explain to you that my rating system's a little bit erratic. I do my best to make it consistent, but it's never going to be completely sensible because it's just a judgment on each book I'm reading and what it feels like when it comes down to it. But let's try and run through this in a vaguely understandable way and see if I can form some coherent thoughts. So, like most people, I use a standard 5-star system. I do, however, also use the 0.5s, so it's basically out of 10, but I just call it a 3.5 instead of a 7. It's just the system I've used. It also goes along with Goodreads using the 5 stars, however they don't do 0.5s, so I often have to round up or down. So it's not a perfect system. I did used to rate out of 10, but when I rated out of 10, I then started including the 0.5s in that system, so it was basically out of 20. And I knew I was useless and would fail to limit myself to only 10 options, so by doing 5 stars, I rarely would do like a 3.25 or something. So it feels like I'm limiting myself to only so many choices, otherwise I'm going to be that person that ends up doing everything on like a out of 100 scale, and it's just going to get ridiculous because I'll start ranking books and go too in depth with it. So yeah, standard 5-star system, but with the 0.5s included along the scale. So I guess first I should just really quickly run through what sort of each of the stars means to me. So starting at the bottom, a 1 star is not a rating I've ever actually given, and it's basically a why did I read this book? My life would be better if I hadn't read this book. It was awful, I hated it, no redeeming qualities, awful. I've never rated a book this because if I hated a book that much, there is no way in hell I would have finished it. I will have DNF'd that way before it gets to the point of rating it, and if I DNF a book I don't tend to give it a rating. I will sometimes review it, but I don't tend to rate it unless I finished it. I don't know why, it's just what I tend to do. But yes, 1 star, worst thing I've ever read. A 2 star is, it's pretty bad, there's a lot I would criticise, but at the same time I could maybe see that it may just not be a book for me. And I've rated some 2 stars or even 2.5 stars, which are like, it just wasn't what I expected, I didn't really enjoy it. There were a lot of things I would criticise in it, but it's not overall like an inherently bad book. It's not a book that I really wanted to read, and I possibly should have put it down partway through, but for whatever reason I powered through and kept reading. A 3-star rating for me is completely average, and this is something I've really struggled with because 3 feels so low, but this is a book which isn't in any way bad, but also isn't in any way that amazing. It will have a few features that I might really like and a few which maybe I don't like so much, but as an overall I'm just quite meh about the book. I'm not really fussed about it. I probably won't be recommending it often. I probably won't be talking about it often because I don't have a strong opinion either way. It's a book I read and it was okay. That's about it. It's my most ambivalent rating of all of them, but I don't give it that often because it feels too mean. And then we have 4 star, which is probably actually the rating I use most often, which is a book that was really good. I really enjoyed reading it, but it's not like an all-time favourite. It's not got anything overly spectacular. It was just like a really fun read. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it, but it's not, you know, the most special thing I've ever read. It doesn't do anything particularly clever. It doesn't have beautiful language. It doesn't have like the most amazing characters, things like that. Just a standard good book that I enjoyed and would read again probably and would highly recommend, but it's not that special to me. And then we have the 5 stars, which are very much books which are my favourites, or even if not quite like an all-time favourite, just a book I absolutely loved. But even if a 5 star isn't like an absolute favourite, it may be a book which I really enjoyed, it wasn't a favourite, but it had like phenomenal writing, or a particularly interesting character, or a super clever plot. Something like that which just ups it that little bit, and I think it deserves that top rating. I do also unofficially sort of have like a 5+ star, which is basically just me selecting my favourites from the 5 stars. That's it. It's not actually a rating I use, it's just very much like this is both a 5 star and a new favourite. So that's like an unofficial thing which I don't really use, but it's in the back of my mind. So that's a brief overview of like what my ratings would mean, very vaguely. But it has taken me so long to get to this. For years and years, I've rated almost everything that I've read that's even half decent as a 4 star, because 3 to me always felt really bad. I know 3 is right in the middle, if not actually above it, because 2.5 would be the middle, but it just feels low, it feels mean, but I'm getting a lot better, especially this year, at rating things 3 stars. I still don't rate that many books 3 star, but I'm definitely comfortable in doing so, but I'm still kind of working out at what point I want to knock it down from like a 4 star to a 3, at what level of I enjoyed it, but I'm not fussed about it, it becomes a 3, because there's quite a lot of books where it's like, I enjoyed it, would my life have been much different if I didn't read it? And I struggle to find that balance sometimes between a 3 and a 4 star. But I feel like I'm getting there, and I'm definitely getting more confident in rating things as a 3 and not feeling too bad about it. Another thing I will mention, which is probably my biggest inconsistency in how I rate, well, an inconsistency with how I work as a human, is if I rate something 0.5, what I round it to. This frustrates people, and I can see why. It frustrates me. It frustrates the mathematical side of my brain. But if I rate something a 3.5, I will most likely not round it up to a 4 on Goodreads. It does depend. If something's like a really high 3.5 and I was debating between a 3.5 and 4, yeah, it'll be a 4 on Goodreads. But if it's just a standard 3.5, I will actually rate it a 3. This is going to be mathematical for anyone who cares. I choose to truncate and not round. I don't know why, but that is just how I do it. So if you've watched any of my wrap-up videos, I do stats and I only go through what I rated 5, 4, and 3 stars and 2 stars and such, just how many of each. And in that, if something is a 3.5, I will have put it in with the 3s. I just take that first number, that's the section it goes into, because otherwise I end up with like 3.5s going both ways and I get confused with what I meant for it. So yeah, that is my rule. If something's a 4.5, it's a 4. If something is a 3.5, it's a 3. If it's a 2.5, it's a 2. There are exceptions very occasionally, but that is overall how I function, just because it's easier and otherwise I will get confused. So apologies to anyone who doesn't like the mathematical side of that, because 0.5 should always round up, but it's how it's happening. In terms of how I decide a rating for a book though, this is so difficult to talk about because it's really subjective and really depends on the book. So there are definitely some books I have read the first line of and you just know from the feeling you get that it's going to be a 5-star book. But there are some where you know it's really solid, but you just can't quite decide until you've read the whole thing. But overall, at the end of a book, the way I rate it is just, how did I feel about it? That's the most important thing to me. And that can weigh up enjoyment and the writing style and the skill and all of that. But that's my overall, it's just, how do I feel about it? What does it feel like to me? And I know a lot of people use things like Corpile and things like that to work out a rating based on all different criteria. But I don't feel like that would work for me. I just have to read a book, think about how it sits, how it feels, and then kind of give my rating based off that. I would obviously not give a book which I really thought bad things about but felt good about, like a 5-star or something, but that's just how it works for me. It has to be quite a natural sort of progression. And then once I've decided on that, like overall what area it's in, so is it a 3 to 4 range book or a 4 to 5 range book, that's when I start thinking about the 0.5s, and that's where I start getting a bit more critical. So I was like, is it a really fun book but it has slightly less strong writing, or it has a slightly confusing plot? Or is it an okay book but it has beautifully written characters and really gorgeous prose? And that's when I'll normally add or minus a 0.5. I'm not sure how much sense this is making, but I'm doing the best I can. So just to give an example, if I was to read a book that overall felt like a 4-star to me, but it had absolutely stunning writing and I was just obsessed with it and I'd marked loads of different quotes because they were beautiful, I'd probably up that to a 4.5. However, if I had a book that was really fun and really great and I was going to rate a 4, but the plot was kind of confusing and it didn't follow and it didn't go the way I think it should have, not as in like personal preference for storyline, but more it didn't develop the parts it should have and it skipped over relevant bits, that's when I would knock it down to a 3.5. But yeah, as I said, this has been ever evolving. I'm still working on feeling confident in how I rate books, so it's definitely still a bit of a sliding scale and I get really, really stuck quite regularly because I might rate 2 books 4 stars, but like I'll very much prefer one over the other. And I'll be like, oh, should one of them not be a 4? Should one of them be a 3.5? Should one of them be a 4.5? So I have to try kind of hard to not compare books too closely because especially my 4-star rating, it can encompass so many different things between a gorgeously written book or just a fun book. And another point similar to that is I rate fantasy and contemporary very differently, unintentionally. For whatever reason, it is exceedingly rare for me to give a contemporary book 5 stars. I don't know why, but I think for some reason in my brain, they just very, very rarely feel like 5-star reads. Whereas fantasy, I'm almost more forgiving. I don't know if it's just because I like being in another world that it makes me more inclined to give it a 5-star. But a contemporary to be 5-star has to do something really spectacular, whereas a fantasy with a gorgeous world and a decent plot could still creep into that category. I don't know. It's subjective, but I try to be as level-headed as I can and get the ratings as consistent as I can so that obviously people who watch my videos or see my ratings on Goodreads will know what a 3-star means and what sort of books I'm going to rate in that area. But it is always going to be a little bit subjective. And I guess the final thing I'll say on rating is to do with my 5 stars. I can read the most phenomenal book with amazing characters and amazing prose and amazing everything that I feel like deserves a 5-star. It doesn't mean I will give it one. 5-star is really reserved for books that have a 5-star feeling. Can I quantify what a 5-star feeling is? Absolutely not. But it's very much, I know when a book is a 5-star, and if I'm questioning that, I will almost certainly give it a 4.5. I really am quite protective of my 5 stars. I do still give them relatively regularly, like I normally have at least 1 or 2 a month, but I will really have to feel like it's a 5-star. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an instant favourite, but whatever that means, it has to feel like it is a 5-star read before I will give it a 5-star. And that feels kind of mean because I can't really quantify it and I can't tell you what would make a book that for me, but it's just how it works. So moving on from the absolute confusion that is how I attempt to rate books, because honestly, do I even know at this point, let's talk briefly about how I annotate books. So I first started annotating books at the end of 2018, I think in either October or November, because I was taking part in the Raven Cycle read along. And this was actually also the time when I started reading much quicker because it was a read along of 4 books in the month and I really wasn't sure if I was going to keep up with it. I was really concerned that I was gonna have to like do a certain number of pages every day. Yeah, I finished all the books in like a week and a half and realized, oh, I can read pretty quickly when I want to. But this series, just my physical copies amuse me because you can see when I started annotating. So I didn't for the first 2 books at all. Book 3, I just started doing a few little tabs right towards the end. And book 4, I had discovered a love for tabbing. And tabbing is definitely pretty much the only form of annotation I do. I am really considering getting into actually writing in my books, but I'm too protective of them. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. So yes, this was when I first got into it, when I read The Raven King in 2018. And then after reading that, about a month or so later was the first time I read The Night Circus, and I am so glad I had started tabbing at this point because I still have all my original tabs in my original copy that I read. But then throughout the rest of 2018 and most of 2019, I actually tabbed probably the majority of the books I read. Not all of them, and a lot of them may literally just have 1 or 2 tabs of little bits I wanted to pick out, but I tabbed a lot of books. And then I'm doing it less at the moment. I definitely still tab some, like the one I'm currently reading. I'm currently actually rereading Prior of the Orange Tree and I'm definitely tabbing that. But I don't tab everything anymore. If towards the beginning of a book I see something and think, ooh, I really want to mark that, then I will know pretty quickly that it's a book I'm going to want to tab. But it definitely doesn't happen for all of them, and kind of unsurprisingly, it most often happens for the books which are looking like they're shaping up to be a 4.5 or 5-star read. If it's a book I'm pretty mediocre about / just enjoying, it's not normally one that needs tabbing. And also, even if it's a book I love, it doesn't necessarily have tabs. It really depends on what the content of the book is and what sort of things I like tabbing, which is what we will get into. So really quickly before we get into explaining what I tab, I just wanted to talk about what tabs I use. So as you can see, when I first started, I just used these little paper post-it notes, but I found these so frustrating because they cover up the text. And I found it so annoying because I couldn't go back and see what I'd tabbed without moving the tab out of the way. So I then started experimenting with lots of transparent tabs and colourful transparent tabs, and it took me a long time to find some which were affordable and accessible. And then I stumbled across Sainsbury's. They have these little packs of 5 colour tabs. I actually have a pack I'm currently using here, and they're so good. They are so good. They're really easy to get hold of in the UK because Sainsbury's are everywhere. They're really easy to pull out when you need one. You just pull it and it's there for the next time you need it, which I love because when I'm tabbing, I don't like being particularly distracted. I like to just quickly grab and keep reading. If I stop and think too hard, I lose the pace of the book and I slow myself down, which I don't like. So these have ended up being absolutely perfect for me, but let's talk through what each colour means. So there are 5 colours in these tabs, and I've kind of sometimes wished there were more, but I'm actually working really well with a 5 colour system. So I've got this copy of The Night Circus here with many tabs in it, not surprisingly, to talk through what all my colours mean. So I'm going to go in rainbow order, even though that's not how my brain would think about it, but it's probably the easiest. So starting with pink. Not overly surprisingly, pink is cute and or romance. So you can see here, pink starts coming in about halfway through the book, which would make sense because that's when the romantic plot kind of starts picking up. but it also can just mean any cute moment. So an example that I always think of is in the 10,000 Doors of January, there's a lot of pink tabs near the beginning because the main character has a really cute relationship with her dog and her dog's really cute. So I tabbed those pink because they're really cute moments. So a lot of them are the big romantic scenes and moments like that, which I really enjoy. But it can be a friendship one-liner that's really cute. It could be a pet, anything that just makes me kind of that sort of, you know, that feeling of, oh, that's really sweet. That's gonna get a pink tab instantly. Next up is orange, and this is not a color I use very often. There's very few of them in most books. There's more in this than most. And for me, this is either a shocking or like a foreboding moment. So if a big plot twist happens and I wasn't seeing it coming, or someone admits something really suddenly, that will get orange. Or especially if I'm rereading a book, hence why there's orange towards the beginning of this, if something is said that I know will link to a plot point later, or if I'm reading a book for the first time and I see a point and I go, that's definitely hinting at something, I'll mark it orange, because I just like going back to them being like, I was right, I absolutely saw that coming a mile off. So that's that sort of thing. It's either a big plot change or shocking moment, or a suspicion that it's going to mean something relevant later. I can't quite explain why those two go so in hand for me, but they really do, so they're the same color. And then yellow is by far my most used color on every book that I read. As you can see, many, many yellow tabs. And that is two things. Firstly, it's any quotes I like. It's literally any piece of prose, any quote, anything that I just like. It just sits nicely with me. And similar to that, it's just anything that doesn't fall into the other four categories that I like. Hence why there's so many, especially in a lyrical book like this. There's a lot of prose markers. There's also just things that I like. So just as a very quick example, a line from The Night Circus, which I've marked yellow, which yes, I like the writing, but more than anything, it sat nicely with me, is acts that had been training in separate countries on separate continents now perform in adjacent tents. So it's not that special a line, but for whatever reason, I think knowing the book and knowing about this book, to me that just felt like such a nice summary of the feel of the book, and it hit. Anything that makes me go, yeah, okay, I like that. I just tab it, so I have it saved for later. And so yeah, yellow tabs always dominate every annotated book I have. So yeah, another two examples, lots of yellow. So then moving on to green. Green is funny. Any funny line I like, any funny character. It's quite a simple one, that. It's just anything that makes me chuckle is green. It's quite a simple one, that. And then ending off with blue, shock horror, it's anything sad. This is probably my least used color along with orange, as it's rare for me to find something really, really sad in a book, but it does happen and I do mark them. So I have it there and it works for me. But yes, green, yellow and pink are by far my most used colors, which is a pain because I get through yellow like there's no tomorrow, and then I end up with packs without yellow in them and I get really stuck. But luckily these don't cost very much, so I do sometimes just throw away a pack where the yellows run out because I just always use more yellow than anything else. The one other thing I do tab in books is I have two reasons for this, is I often have tabs along the top of my book. So in this one, I've tabbed two different things, and the colors for these don't mean anything. I literally just pick whatever color matches the book. So in this book, the pink tabs mark these little extracts which come at the beginning of different sections, and the orange tabs mark the different parts. And I just do that so I can get like a feel for the structure of the book. I just quite enjoy having them. And also, especially the pink ones are little sections I've really enjoyed, so I wanted to go back and read them if I just wanted to read those bits. And you can see, even when I first read this book, I did it along the top in rainbow that time because I felt like it. As I said, the colours for those don't mean anything, it's just whatever colour matches the book. But I do this quite a lot because I really like sort of seeing where the breaks in the book are. It just intrigues me. But I also do it if I'm finding a book quite a slow read. So another example would be The Starless Sea. I'm literally just grabbing Erin Morgenstern because they're right here. So I have two different types of tabs like this in this book. I have the yellow ones along the top, which show the different sections of the book. So if I go to any yellow tab, it'll be a new section. And then along the side right at the top, so above where the text would be, I have these orange and yellow. And this is because I was trying to read this book in a certain number of days, and so I calculated how many pages I needed to read. The orange tabs coincide to 50 pages and the pink to 150. And these have got kind of bent from it being on my shelf, but that was just for me. When I'm finding a book really slow, I like having short goals, so I often put tabs in at 50-page intervals to keep me going. And it just makes it a lot easier because when I'm feeling like I'm reading for ages and I've not had a chapter break or a section break or I've made any progress, I can see myself getting closer and closer to that tab and it keeps me going. Another example where I did a similar thing was Priory of the Orange Tree. These 4 tabs here are the different books in the book. So it's split up into like 5 or 6 books. And I just did that so I could see when I was getting near to one. But then another thing which I completely forgot I do because I don't do it very often, is I have these tabs at the edge here. And that was because pretty early on into this book, I thought I'd be tabbing it quite a lot, which I did, not loads, but quite a lot. And I really thought there'd be some quotes more than others that I wanted to pick out and I wanted to like write in my journal or do a design around. And so I specifically tabbed those. So if I have a tab here, it means the relevant tab down the side is a quote I especially liked. So just going to the first of those, you can see it is on the same page as a yellow tab, and that's just because I really, really wanted to pick out that quote. And I'm also just laughing because I just reread this yesterday and I tabbed that exact same part. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm reading a different edition this time. And on that, the fact that I tab books is actually one of the reasons I like having different editions, because when I reread a book, I can then re-tab it. So yet again, the example being The Night Circus, this is the first time I read the book. This is the second time I read the book. I love having that comparison and also then going back and seeing if I did tab the same moments the second time. And obviously you can see I tabbed way more the second time for whatever reason. And I would love to see in future what I tabbed the next time. And then again, for the Starless Sea, I never actually finished my reread of this because I was trying to reread it before an event I went to and I didn't manage it. But that's what I tabbed the first time. That's what I tabbed the first half of the second time. I love reading different editions and being able to compare like that. I just find it really interesting. And sometimes I tab more, sometimes I tab less. Books with beautiful writing, I feel like I tend to tab more a second time because once I know the plot, I can really sit in the writing. Books where it's more plot driven, I will mark things the first time because they're exciting, and then once I know what the plot is, I just enjoy rereading it and I don't feel the need to tab in the same way. But tabbing is definitely the main form of annotation I do. I thus far have not written in a book past like GCSE English, but I'm starting to consider it. And the reason for this is actually that I started reading on my iPad. And when reading on a Kindle, you can write little notes to yourself. And I had so much fun with this. So I think I've already briefly shown this, but when I read The Once and Future Witches, I made so many annotations, it's insane. And I wrote stupid notes to myself. The majority of them are just like, oh, that's cute. Oh, I know what's gonna happen. Like silly little things, but I loved doing it. And so now I'm very much starting to consider buying a copy of books I love to write in and see if I like it. But I may have a video coming on that very soon if I give it a go. We'll see, because it's definitely something I'm interested in trying. But yeah, for now, the tabs work fine for me. If I specifically love a quote, I'll end up writing it down somewhere. But that's about it for how I rate and annotate, I think. If you have any more questions, then feel free to comment them down below and I will definitely answer them because I love talking about things like this. Let me know how you rate your books and do you annotate them? I love seeing other people's like ways of doing this, but that's it for this video. So thank you so much for watching. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I've got all my other social medias linked down below in the description as I always do if you want to connect on any other platform. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me, but bye and I'll see you in the next one.